want to go home and think about what I've done, and left.
We were both invited to test a Formula One car for McLaren. A magnificent event. It was McLaren number 8, which ironically 10 years later I would race in Formula One. He drove first, and Stefan Beloff was also there. Sadly, they're both dead now, and myself. And I'll never forget Senna screaming past the pits, blue smoke pouring out of the back. I stood beside Ron Dennis at the time, although he wouldn't know or remember. And Senna just kept his foot in until he passed the point where it was being timing, jumped out and wanted to know what the lap time was because he felt it was his best lap. I very clearly remember Ron Dennis saying, I find it very difficult to press a stopwatch when my car is in flames and pouring smoke out of the back. Ayrton. But somehow they put another engine in it, and Ayrton negotiated a second go in the car because we'd all done very, very similar lap times, and of course he went significantly faster with a second opportunity. And it always impressed me how he, at such an early age, had that kind of head on him, that kind of maturity to know what the right thing to do was.
An early marriage was sacrificed to his racing ambitions, and as these progressed, the total support of his parents remained. Through Formula 3, Formula 1 and on to the World Championship title itself, his family and his country remained paramount in his mind. Even in the karting days, the yellow helmet and indeed the driving style were easy to spot, and he was keen that the Brazilian flag should become as familiar on the race circuits and television screens of the world. Maybe even more than Pelé, he'd become Brazil's greatest sporting hero, and certainly its greatest ambassador.
I was born here, and the things I know, as fundamental things of life, I learn here. I learn with my family, with my friends, with my teachers at school, by living day by day, experience the incredible atmosphere that Brazil has got.
I'm really a fan. I'm very excited. You know who that is? Right? All right.
Hello, everybody. Everybody have a good time. Somehow, somewhere in the world, our flag goes up whenever we manage to win or do well. And that is seen by people as a positive thing, as a good thing. And I suppose that counterbalance a little bit to the social problems, the difficulties, and the bad publicity that some of the problems that we have here get outside Brazil.
Inicialmente, até uma ideia que surgiu.
Initially, we thought of just giving up everything, giving up all the businesses. But then, thinking about Ayrton's wishes, he had talked about making some sort of social contribution in a more organized way than he had done before, because he used to be very discreet about it. So we decided to continue all the projects that had already been started and to use his image to help people, even after his death, just as he had helped people before, especially in Brazil, just by being himself through his values and attitudes. Ayrton was a person who cared very much about quality, organization, and doing things in the best way possible. That's why he had the idea of setting up an institution, and the logical thing to do was to set up a foundation.
A lógica foi fazer uma fundação.
In 1988, the partnership between Senna and Ron Dennis at McLaren had begun. Lotus had given him pole positions and victories, but McLaren gave him a championship chance, and that year he'd take it after an acrimonious battle with teammate Alain Prost. And Ayrton was equally determined to establish himself among the highest earners in the sport. When it came to contract negotiations, he was a determined opponent for Ron Dennis, who can claim at least one victory.
He was incredibly tough, even in those early days. in the end, we just came to a complete stalemate over the last $500,000. So I suggested that we actually flicked a coin for the $500,000. He didn't even understand what that meant, and on having it explained that this was just purely the simplest way to break the deadlock, I then had to draw pictures of a head and a tail to be absolutely sure that there was no doubt as to the interpretation. And so we literally wrote on a piece of paper the rules of this very simple thing, because he still didn't have a complete command of the English language. And I won the toss, as it were, which he never ever forgave me for, and I paid 1,000,000 times for that. I owe 1,000,000 times. It was only about 10 days later that it suddenly dawned on him that in fact it wasn't $500,000, it was in fact $1.5 million, because it was a 3-year contract.
I have had all my life a very, very strong and good education. And from that education I have got, again, clear and strong principles in way of behaving. And that's where I'm guided for. I use those lines and those guidelines to move as a man, as a professional. And I don't regret anything. I just feel I'm doing things for the right reason. Some understand, some don't. In the end, you never get everybody to understand and to agree and to accept. But most of them, I'm sure, admire, after all, what I'm doing as a professional and as a man. And as many drivers do, we are exposing our lives. They are consistent, and the reason for it is only one: is to succeed, is to win, is to get the thrill when you cross the finish line in first place.
When you're in a racing car, there is nothing allowed. You don't hear the crowd, you don't see them in the same way as a tennis player, a golf player, and